Hello everyone, I'm Hoko. This video is a Kokinshu Part 1. There are collections of poems called the Three Great Anthologies of Japanese Poetry. There, the Manyoshu, Kokinshu, Shin-kokinshu. Manyoshu was compiled in the middle of 8th century. It is the oldest existing collection of poetry. Kokinshu, Kokinshu for short, literally means collection of ancient and modern Japanese poetry. Shin-kokinshu, Shin-kokinshu for short, Shin means new. They are both Imperial Anthologies of Japanese poetry compiled in the early 10th century and early 13th century respectively. In Kokinshu, the total number of poems is about 1,100. The collection is divided into 20 volumes. Most poems are in tanka form. Tanka means short poetry. It consists of 5 lines with 57577 Japanese syllables. Famous poems from the Manyoshu onward were collected. The two main themes of the poems are 4 seasons and love or romance. While appreciating 14 poems, you learn about Japanese attitude toward nature, their aesthetic sense, their techniques for composing poems, and the social background of their time. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Kokinshu is the first imperial anthology compiled by the order of Emperor Daigo around 905. It was about 100 years after Kyoto became the capital. The aristocrats were in charge of politics, with the emperor at their top. The Emperor Daigo appointed the 4 people to select the poems. All the 4 selectors, including Tsurayuki, were not aristocrats, but low-ranking officials. The emperor chose them for their ability as poets and their aptitude for editorial works. One of the 2 main themes of poems in Kokinshu is the 4 seasons. Among the 4 seasons, more poems were about spring and autumn. The winter in Kyoto was very cold, and people were eagerly awaiting the arrival of spring. The Japanese calendar defines the day on which spring begins. Empress of Nijo family composed a poem while seeing the falling snow on the first day of spring. 雪のうちに春は気にけりうぐいすの凍れる涙今や特乱 In the falling snow, here comes spring. The frozen tears of the bush warblers have already melted. There are natural phenomena that remind the Japanese people of the arrival of spring. One example is a haze, which rises in spring. The next poem was by Ise. She was a female official serving the empress. She saw a flock of geese flying away through the haze and composed a poem. Geese are migratory birds that fly to Japan from Siberia in the fall and go back to Siberia in the spring. 春が過ぎ、龍を見捨てて行く狩りは、花なき里に炭や習える。Spring haze, without any attention, geese flying away to the familiar place with no flowers. Ise was happy that spring had come. She wondered why the geese would fly away to the desolate land without flowers. Among the female poets in Kokinshu, Ise left the most poems. Today, cherry blossom, sakura in Japanese, is the most popular flower among Japanese people. In spring, Japanese people look forward to the blooming of sakura. When sakura is blooming, they worry that wind or rain will disperse the flowers. As sakura is in bloom for only 10 days to 2 weeks, Japanese people are very concerned about it during the blooming season. In the Manyoshu, sakura was not yet popular. Its poems were only 1/3 of the poems about plum blossoms. Since Kokinshu, sakura has become the most frequently composed flower. Ariwara no Narihira was a very handsome nobleman and an excellent poet. He fell in love with many women. The Tales of Ise, a famous classic of Japanese literature, is an episodic story with many poems. The model for its main character is said to be Narihira. When Narihira viewed Sakura in the villa of the prince he had served, he composed a poem. In his poem, he expressed his wish that the cherry blossoms would never fall and continue to bloom. 世の中に耐えて桜のなかりせば、春の心はのどけからまし。Cherry flowers, if completely disappeared in this world, would our spring feelings be more peaceful? Next one is by Kino Tsurayuki. He plays a central role in compiling Kokinshu and wrote its preface in Japanese characters. His preface is known as the first theory of poetry and is considered a pioneer in the study of poetry. His poems are the largest in number in Kokinshu. He was also good at calligraphy, and many works were thought to be his handwritten, but now they are regarded transcriptions. Those transcriptions are used as Japanese calligraphy model. The diary he wrote when he returned to the capital from his post is called the Tosa Diary. It is still read today as the first diary literature in Japan. One of the common techniques used by poets in Kokinshu is to compare one thing to another. For example, snow is compared to flowers, flowers to snow, and the sky to the sea, and so on. Using this technique, Tsurayuki composed a poem. 桜花、散りぬる風の名残には、水なき空に波ぞ立ちける。Cherry blossoms, scattering in the wind, leave a lingering image in a sky without water, ripples of petals. The next poem was composed by an unknown poet. 春ごとに花の盛りはありなめど、愛民ことは命なりけり。Every spring, flowers surely show me their greatest beauty, but to see them at their best depends on my life. 大志高知の狐 is one of the 4 selectors of Kokinshu and is a representative poet along with Tsurayuki. His poems in the collection are second only to those of Tsurayuki. He composed on the last day of summer in the calendar. 夏と秋と行き交う空の通いじは、片へ涼しき風や膨らん。The passing summer and the coming autumn, pathway in between, on the latter side, is a cool breeze blowing. Japanese people sense the seasons with their 5 senses, including sight and hearing. Fujiwara no Tsurayuki composed a poem on the first day of autumn. He sensed the coming of autumn from the sound of the wind. 秋絹と目にはさやかに見えねども、風の音にぞ驚かれぬる。Autumn is here, not clear to my eyes, but the sound of wind makes me realize season has changed. 清原の塚藪 was a low-ranking nobleman and the great-grandfather of Sei Shonagon, who wrote the Pillow Book about 70 years later. 塚藪 composed a poem comparing snow to flowers. 冬ながら空より花の散り来るは、雲のあなたは春にやあるらん。Still in winter, but flowers are falling from the sky. Beyond the clouds might already be spring. The next one is by Ono Takamura. He composed a poem when he saw white plum blossoms covered with falling snow. 花の色は雪に混じりて見えずとも、顔だに匂え人の知るべく。White plums, hardly found in the snow, give off your fragrance for us to know where you are hiding. Takamura personified plum blossoms. He expressed his love for plum blossoms that bloom in the cold winter and his longing for spring. At that time, aristocrats enjoyed making incense by mixing various ingredients such as plums. Smelling fragrance was an important part of their culture, and the culture is still alive today. Next, I'll introduce 3 poems belonging to the love category. The first one is by Mibuno Tadamine. Tadamine was one of the 4 selectors of Kokinshu, and his poetry teacher was Tsurayuki. Although he had the lowest social status of the 4, his poetry was considered top-notch. The topic of his poem is unknown. 風吹けば峰にわかるる白雲の、耐えて連れなき君が心か。Like a white cloud, leaving mountain peaks, blown by the wind. You have separated so heartlessly from me. When Kokinshu was compiled, it was common for husbands to visit their wives in the evening and return home the next morning. Many men had more than one wife in addition to their regular wives, and women without financial resources depended on men for their livelihood. The fact men stopped visiting meant economic hardship for these women. The next poem is by Prince Sose. He was born into the imperial lineage following his father and rose steadily through the ranks as the son of the aristocrat. However, when the emperor passed away, his father mourned his death and became a priest. It is said that when his father became Priest Henjo, he told his son, "A son of a priest should become a priest," and he was made Priest Sose. He was good at composing poems from a woman's point of view. 今今といいしばかりに長月の有明の月を待ちでつるかな。I'm coming to you, just believed and waited as a long autumn night until I found the moon still staying at the dawn. Among female poets in Kokinshu, Ono no Komachi has the second largest poems after Ise. She is legendary for her exceptional beauty, but her background is completely unknown. She exchanged poems with several male poets and left many love poems. The next is one of them. 色見えで移ろうものは世の中の人の心の花にぞありける。What fades away without showing up in colors is a flower of love, blooms in our minds. One grand minister passed away and his body was buried on Fukakusa Hill. His friend Kantsuke no Mineo, a poet, was saddened by his death. He composed a poem calling out to the cherry blossoms in Fukakusa fields that were about to bloom. 深草の延べの桜し心あらば今年ばかりは墨染めに咲け Oh, cherry blossoms in the fields of Fukakusa, if you have a heart, bloom in the morning color, just for this year. The final poem celebrates the longevity of a loved one. It is said that it was used at various celebrations. This poem is the basis of Japan's national anthem. Poet is unknown. 我が君は千代に八千代にさざれ石の岩尾となりて苔の結まで My dear one, how I wish you live farther and farther until tiny pebbles gather to be a mossy rock. In the mid-19th century, the samurai warrior government collapsed and a new government was established with the emperor at its head. And for the first time, the national anthem was established based on a Japanese poem that had been used for celebrations for so many years. In the national anthem, the first line, My dear one, is changed to Kimi ga yo, meaning Your Majesty's reign. It is interpreted to mean, May the reign of our emperor continue in peace forever and ever. The present constitution of Japan states the emperor is a symbol of Japan and the symbol of the unity of the Japanese people and has no authority over state affairs. This is the end of Kokinshu Part 1. Thank you for watching.